Lauren Bacall opened Humphrey Bogart's secret journal. What she found inside changed everything forever. January 1957, Los Angeles. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight. Inside the Holmby Hills mansion, the air smelled of eucalyptus and something else, something heavier. Lauren Bacall stood in the doorway of Humphrey Bogart's study, her hand trembling against the wooden frame. She had not entered this room since the morning he closed his eyes for the last time. 28 days had passed, 28 days of silence, of reporters outside the gates, of condolence letters piling up like autumn leaves. But today something pulled her here. Something she could not name. The room was exactly as he had left it. His reading glasses on the desk, a half-empty glass of water, now stale, the faint scent of his tobacco still clinging to the leather chair. She walked slowly, her fingers brushing against the spines of books he had touched 1,000 times. Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Conrad. He had loved the sea even when his body no longer allowed him to sail. And then she saw it, a small leather notebook tucked behind a stack of old scripts. The cover was worn, the edges soft from years of handling. She had never seen it before. In all their years together, 12 years of marriage, of laughter, of arguments, of whispered promises in the dark, he had never mentioned this. Her heart stopped. She opened it. The first page was dated March 1944. The handwriting was unmistakably his, sharp, impatient, alive. The words hit her like a wave she did not see coming. "I met a girl today." She walked into the room and everything else disappeared. "I do not know her name yet, but I know I will never forget her face." Lauren's breath caught in her throat. She turned the page. "Her name is Betty. They call her Lauren on set. She is 20 years old. I am 44. This is madness. But when she looks at me, I feel like I am finally seeing myself clearly for the first time." The rain outside grew louder. She did not hear it. She was somewhere else now, somewhere in the past, in a world before she knew the weight of loss. This was not just a journal. This was the story of their love written in his own hand. And what she would discover in these pages would change everything she thought she knew about the man she had loved and lost. Chapter 1. March 1944. Warner Brothers Studios, Burbank, California. The afternoon sun cut through the soundstage like a blade. Howard Hawks stood behind the camera, arms crossed, watching the chaos unfold. They were shooting to have and have not, and nothing was going right. The lead actress had called in sick, the script needed rewrites, and Humphrey Bogart, the biggest star on the lot, was in one of his moods. He sat in the corner, cigarette burning between his fingers, eyes fixed on nothing. At 44, Bogart had seen it all: 3 marriages, countless films, a reputation for being difficult, brilliant, and utterly unpredictable. He was tired, not of work. He loved work, but of the emptiness that followed him home every night. And then she walked in, Lauren Bacall. 19 years old, a model from New York with no film experience and a voice that could stop traffic. Hawks had discovered her in a magazine and brought her to Hollywood on a hunch. She was nervous, terrified, completely out of her depth, but she did not show it. She crossed the soundstage with a confidence that belied her age, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on him. Bogart looked up. Their eyes met, and something shifted in the air, something neither of them could explain. "You are Bogart," she said. It was not a question. He smiled. "Last time I checked. They say you are difficult. They say a lot of things." She tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle she intended to solve. "Are you?" He took a long drag from his cigarette. "Depends on who is asking." Hawks watched from across the room, a slow grin spreading across his face. He had seen chemistry before. This was something else. This was combustion. That night, Bogart went home to his wife, his third wife, a woman he no longer loved and perhaps never had. He poured himself a drink and sat in the dark, replaying the moment in his mind, the way she had looked at him, the way she had not flinched. He opened a drawer and pulled out a leather notebook he had not touched in years. He found a pen, and he wrote, "I met a girl today. She walked into the room and everything else disappeared." He did not know it then, but he had just begun writing the most important story of his life. The next few weeks were a blur of long days and electric tension. On set, Bogart and Bacall circled each other like planets caught in each other's gravity. Their scenes crackled with an intensity that made the crew hold their breath. Hawks barely had to direct them. He simply let the camera roll and watched magic happen. "You know how to whistle, don't you, Steve?" she said in one take, her voice low and honeyed. "You just put your lips together and blow." The line was improvised. Bogart forgot his next cue. The crew erupted in laughter. But Bogart was not laughing. He was staring at her with an expression no one had ever seen on his face before. After the shoot, he found her alone in her dressing room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She looked smaller somehow. Younger, the bravado stripped away. "You did good today," he said from the doorway. She turned. "I was terrified. Could not tell. That is the trick, is it not?" She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "Make them think you know what you're doing, even when you do not." He stepped closer. "Can I tell you something?" "Yes. I have been in this business for 20 years. I have worked with the best, but I have never seen anyone do what you did today." She looked away, embarrassed. "You are just being kind." "I am never kind." He paused. "Ask anyone." She laughed. A real laugh, warm and unguarded. And in that moment, something broke open between them, a door that could not be closed. That night Bogart wrote again. "She laughed today, really laughed, and I realized I would do anything to hear that sound again. I am in trouble, deep trouble, and I do not care." The weeks turned into months. The film wrapped. But whatever had started between them did not end. They began meeting in secret. Coffee shops in the valley, long drives along the coast, stolen moments in empty sound stages. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. Books they loved, dreams they had abandoned, fears they had never spoken aloud. Bogart's marriage was crumbling. It had been crumbling for years, held together by habit and Hollywood expectations. But now, for the first time, he had a reason to let it fall. "I'm going to leave her," he told Lauren one night, parked on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. The moon hung low over the water, casting silver light across her face. She was quiet for a long moment. "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything." "People will talk." "Let them." She turned to him, her eyes searching his. "I'm not going to be anyone's scandal, Humphrey. I'm not going to be the girl who ruined your life." He took her hand. "You are not ruining anything. You are saving me." She did not answer, but she did not pull away either. 2 weeks later, Bogart filed for separation. The headlines exploded. The studio panicked, but Bogart did not care. For the first time in his life, he was following his heart instead of his head, and in his journal he wrote, "I told her I love her today." She did not say it back. She just looked at me with those eyes, those impossible eyes, and I knew she felt it too. She is just scared, so am I. But I would rather be scared with her than safe with anyone else. Check if you are already subscribed to this channel. These are not just stories. They are windows into the souls of people who loved with everything they had. If you want to feel something real, hit that subscribe button now. Chapter 2, May 1945, Beverly Hills, California. The war was ending, soldiers were coming home, and in a small courthouse on a Tuesday afternoon, Humphrey Bogart married Lauren Bacall. She was 20, he was 45. The age difference had been the subject of endless gossip, but standing before the judge, neither of them cared. She wore a simple pink suit. He wore a grey double-breasted jacket and a smile that reporters would later describe as the happiest Bogart had ever looked. There were no crowds, no fanfare, just a handful of close friends, a borrowed ring, and 2 people who had found something rare in a world that often felt empty. After the ceremony, they drove to a small house Bogart had rented in the hills. It was not grand, nothing like the mansions their peers inhabited, but it was theirs, a place where they could be themselves, away from the cameras and the expectations. That night, Bogart sat on the porch watching the sun set over the city. Lauren came out with 2 glasses of champagne and sat beside him. "So," she said, "we did it. We did. Any regrets?" He looked at her, really looked at her, and shook his head. "Not a single one." She leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. "What happens now?" "Now?" He kissed the top of her head. "Now we live." The first years of their marriage were a whirlwind. They made films together, The Big Sleep, Dark Passage, Key Largo, each one capturing a different facet of their chemistry. On screen, they were electric. Off screen, they were inseparable. Bogart was a different man with Lauren. Softer, more open. The hard edges that had defined him for decades began to smooth. He laughed more. He drank less. He talked about the future instead of dwelling on the past. "You changed me," he told her one night, lying in bed after a long day of shooting. "I do not know how you did it, but you changed me." She traced her fingers along his jaw. "I did not change you. I just showed you who you already were." He thought about that for a long time after she fell asleep, and then he got up, went to his study, and wrote, "She says she did not change me, but she is wrong. Before her, I was just going through the motions, acting on screen, acting in life. She made me real. She made everything real. But Hollywood was not kind to happiness. The same press that had celebrated their romance now looked for cracks. Rumors swirled. Jealousies festered. Bogart's drinking, which had subsided, sometimes crept back during stressful shoots. There were arguments, loud ones, the kind that left both of them shaken. One night, after a particularly brutal fight over nothing important, Lauren locked herself in the bedroom. Bogart stood on the other side of the door, his forehead pressed against the wood. "I am sorry," he said. "I am so sorry." Silence. "I do not know why I do this, why I push away the people I love. But I am trying, I swear I am trying." The door opened. She stood there, eyes red, arms crossed. "Trying is not enough, Humphrey. I need you to actually be here, with me, not fighting ghosts from your past." He stepped forward and took her hands. "I will do better, will do. I promise. Do not promise, just do." He nodded, and that night he wrote the most honest entry in his journal. "I almost lost her tonight. Over nothing, over my own stupidity. I have spent my whole life running from the things that scare me. But she scares me most of all, not because she could hurt me, but because losing her would break me completely. I have to be better. Not for me, for her, for us." The years passed. They had children. Stephen in 1949, Leslie in 1952. Bogart, who had never imagined himself as a father, discovered a capacity for tenderness he did not know he possessed. He would spend hours with his children, reading to them, playing with them, teaching them to sail on his beloved boat, the Santana. "You are a good father," Lauren told him once, watching him carry a sleeping Stephen to bed. "Better than you think. I had a good teacher." He looked at her. "You showed me what love is supposed to look like." She smiled. "We showed each other." These were the golden years. The years of laughter and warmth and a house filled with the sounds of children running and music playing, and two people who had somehow found each other against all odds. But time, as it always does, was running out, and neither of them knew how little of it they had left. Chapter 3. September 1955. Los Angeles, California. The cough started in the summer. A small thing at first. A tickle in the throat, a roughness in the voice. Bogart blamed it on too many cigarettes, too many late nights. He had been smoking since he was a teenager. It was part of who he was, as essential as breathing. But by September, the cough had turned into something else, something that would not go away. Lauren noticed first. She always noticed. "You need to see a doctor," she said one morning, watching him struggle through breakfast. "It is nothing. Humphrey." He looked up at the sharpness in her voice. Her eyes were filled with something he rarely saw there. Fear. "Fine," he said. "I will go." The diagnosis came a week later. The word hung in the air like smoke that would not clear. The doctor spoke in measured tones about treatment options, about survival rates, about the importance of staying positive. Bogart listened, his face expressionless, his mind already somewhere else. Lauren sat beside him, her hand gripping his so tightly, her knuckles turned white. She did not cry. Not then. She would not give the universe the satisfaction. On the drive home, they did not speak. The silence was heavy, filled with all the words they could not find. When they pulled into the driveway, Bogart turned off the engine but did not move. "I am not going to let this beat me," he said finally. "I know. I have too much to live for." She reached over and touched his face. "We are going to fight this together. Do you hear me? Together." He nodded. And for the first time since the diagnosis, he felt something other than fear. He felt hope. The next year was a battle. Surgery, treatment, good days and bad days. Bogart continued to work when he could. He finished The Harder They Fall, his final film, through sheer force of will. On set, he was the same old Bogart, sharp, professional, demanding. No one could tell he was fighting for his life. But at home, the mask came off. There were nights when the exhaustion was so complete he could barely climb the stairs. Nights when he would sit in his study, staring at the wall, confronting the mortality he had always kept at arm's length. And there were nights when he wrote, "I am scared. I have never admitted that before, not even to myself. But I am scared of leaving them. Lauren, the children, everything we have built. I thought I would have more time. Everyone thinks they will have more time." Lauren became his anchor. She arranged his medications, managed his doctors, shielded him from the press. She read to him when he was too tired to hold a book. She held him when the pain became too much to bear alone. One night, after a particularly difficult day, Bogart took her hand. "I need you to know something," he said. "What?" "You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Every moment with you, every single moment has been worth it. Whatever happens, I need you to remember that." She blinked back tears. "Do not talk like that. I have to, because I might not get another chance." He squeezed her hand. "You saved me, Lauren. You gave me a life I did not know I was allowed to have, and I am grateful. Every day, I am grateful." She leaned forward and kissed him, soft and tender, and filled with all the words she could not speak. That night, alone in his study, Bogart opened his journal for what would be one of the last times. "I do not know how many pages I have left, but I know how I want this story to end. I want her to know, really know, what she meant to me. Not just the words I said, but the words I could not say, the moments I held back, the love I was too scared to show completely. I am going to write it all down, every bit of it, so that when I am gone, she will have something to hold on to, something real, something true. If you have ever loved someone with your whole heart, someone you would fight for, cry for, live for, leave a comment right now saying, 'Love never dies.' Let me know you understand what this kind of love really means." Chapter 4. November 1956, Holmby Hills, California. The leaves had begun to fall when Bogart made his final public appearance. It was a small gathering. Just a few close friends, old colleagues from the studio days. Frank Sinatra was there, Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn. They came not to say goodbye, but to remind him that he was not alone. Bogart sat in his favorite chair, dressed impeccably despite his weakened state. He had always believed in showing up properly, no matter the circumstances. "A man should look like he means it," he used to say, even at the end. The conversation was light. Old stories, shared laughter, the kind of easy banter that comes from decades of friendship. But beneath the words, everyone knew. This was a farewell. When the guests finally left, Lauren helped Bogart to his feet. He was unsteady now, leaning on her more than he would have liked. "Good party," he said. "You were wonderful. I was sitting in a chair." She smiled. "You were wonderful." He looked at her, really looked at her, with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I love you, Betty. I have loved you since the first moment I saw you." She did not correct him. Betty was the name she had gone by before Hollywood, before Lauren, before everything. He was the only one who still called her that. It was their secret, their intimacy. "I love you too," she whispered. That night he asked her to bring him his journal. "I want to write something," he said. "Something for you." She handed it to him, watching as his trembling fingers found the pen. He wrote slowly, deliberately, each word costing him more effort than she could bear to watch. When he finished, he closed the journal and placed it on the nightstand. "This is yours now," he said. "When I am gone, I want you to read it, all of it, every word. Humphrey, promise me." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I promise." He reached up and wiped her cheek with his thumb. "Do not cry for me, Betty. Cry for the life we had. Cry because it was beautiful, not because it is ending." She took his hand and held it against her heart. "It is not ending, not really. As long as I remember you, you are still here." He smiled, that crooked, iconic smile that had made him a star. "That is the most romantic thing you have ever said. I learned from the best." The last weeks were quiet. The house grew still, the visitors fewer, the world outside fading into irrelevance. Lauren stayed by his side constantly, reading to him, talking to him, simply being there. They did not speak of the future. They did not need to. Everything that mattered had already been said. On the night of January 13th, 1957, Bogart slipped into sleep and did not wake. Lauren was beside him when it happened. She held his hand until it grew cold, then sat in silence, listening to the rain that had begun to fall outside. He was 57 years old. They had been married for 11 years, and Lauren Bacall had just become a widow at 32. The funeral was private, as Bogart would have wanted. No crowds, no spectacle, just the people who had truly known him, gathered to honor a man who had lived fully and loved deeply. John Huston delivered the eulogy. His voice broke only once, when he quoted something Bogart had once told him. "The whole world is about 3 drinks behind, but the people who matter, they catch up eventually." Lauren did not speak. She could not, but she stood at the front of the room accepting condolences with a grace that masked the devastation beneath. That night, she returned to the empty house. The children were asleep. The staff had gone home. She was alone for the first time in over a decade. She walked to his study and sat in his chair, breathing in the last traces of his presence. The journal was still on the nightstand where he had left it. She picked it up, feeling the weight of it in her hands. She was not ready to open it. Not yet, but she would be. Soon. Chapter 5. February 1957. Holmby Hills, California. 28 days after Humphrey Bogart's passing, Lauren Bacall finally opened his journal. She had tried before, 3 times in fact, but each time something had stopped her. The weight of anticipation, the fear of what she might find, the knowledge that once she read his words, they would be the last new words of his she would ever receive. But that morning, something shifted. The grief that had been crushing her began to transform into something else, a need to connect, to understand, to hold on to whatever fragments of him remained. She made a cup of tea, his favorite, Earl Grey, and carried the journal to the window seat overlooking the garden he had loved. The winter sun was pale but present, casting gentle light across the worn leather cover. She opened to the first page. March 1944. I met a girl today. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. She blinked them back and continued reading. Page after page, year after year, she traveled through their story as he had experienced it. His uncertainty in those early days, his terror at the depth of his feelings, his joy when she agreed to marry him, his wonder at becoming a father. But there was more, so much more. There were entries about arguments she had forgotten, followed by his private reflections on his own behavior. There were confessions of insecurity she had never suspected, moments when he had doubted himself, doubted his worthiness, doubted that someone like her could truly love someone like him. I do not deserve her, he wrote after their first anniversary, but I will spend the rest of my life trying to become the man she already sees in me. There were observations about her that made her laugh and cry in equal measure. The way she tilted her head when she was thinking, the sound of her singing in the shower, the fierce protectiveness she showed toward their children. She is a lioness, he wrote after Stephen's first day of school. She will never let anything hurt them, and God help anyone who tries. And there were love letters, dozens of them, letters he had written to her but never shared, too vulnerable, too exposed, too raw for a man who had spent his life hiding behind a tough exterior. My darling Betty, one began, I am sitting here watching you sleep, and I cannot believe you are real. I have spent my whole life looking for something I could not name. And then you walked into that soundstage, and I knew you were what I had been searching for, not just love, but home. Lauren read for hours, losing herself in his words, in the architecture of his heart laid bare on the page. She laughed at his dry humor. She wept at his tenderness. She ached at the entries about his illness, his fear of leaving her, his desperate hope that she would find happiness after he was gone. And then she reached the final entry. It was dated January 10th, 1957, 3 days before he died. The handwriting was shaky, barely legible, but she could make out the words, Betty, my Betty. I am running out of time. Gad, there is so much I still want to say, but I realize now that I have been saying it all along. Every page of this journal is a love letter to you. Every word is a thank you for making my life mean something. I was not a good man when we met. I was broken and bitter and convinced that happiness was something that happened to other people. You showed me I was wrong. You showed me that love is not something you fall into. It is something you build brick by brick, day by day, choice by choice. And I chose you. Every single day I chose you. Remember that. When I am gone, remember that you were chosen, you were wanted, you were loved beyond measure. Do not mourn me for too long. Live your life, raise our children, fall in love again if you can, but know that wherever I am thinking of you. I am grateful for you. I am yours, forever. Humphrey. Lauren closed the journal and pressed it against her chest. The tears came then, not the quiet tears of the past month, but great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. She cried for the love she had lost. She cried for the years they would never have. She cried for the man who had given her everything and asked for nothing in return. And when the tears finally stopped, she felt something else. Peace. He had left her a roadmap, a guide to who he really was beneath the legend, a reminder that their love had been real and true and worthy of remembrance. She looked out the window at the garden he had planted, now dormant in the winter cold, but waiting for spring, and she made a decision. She would honor him, not with statues or memorials, but with the way she lived her life. She would be strong for their children. She would continue her career. She would keep his memory alive, not through mourning, but through living. That was what he had wanted. That was what he had asked for. And that was what she would give him. Chapter 6. The years that followed were a testament to the love they had shared. Lauren Bacall did not retreat from the world after Humphrey Bogart's passing. She stepped forward, carrying his memory like a torch that illuminated her path. She returned to acting, delivering performances that reminded audiences why she had captivated them from the beginning. She appeared on Broadway, winning accolades for her work in Applause and Woman of the Year. She wrote her autobiography, sharing their story with the world while keeping the most intimate details, the contents of his journal, for herself alone. She raised their children with the same fierce devotion he had witnessed and admired. Stephen grew up to become a writer and producer. Leslie became an actress and yoga instructor. Both carried pieces of their father within them, his intensity, his integrity, his refusal to compromise on matters of principle. Lauren never remarried, not because she closed herself off to love, but because she understood that some connections are singular, unrepeatable. She had other relationships over the years, but none that approached what she had shared with Bogart. "He was the love of my life," she said in an interview decades later, her voice steady but her eyes distant. When you find that, you do not look for a replacement. You simply feel grateful that you experienced it at all. She kept his journal in a locked drawer beside her bed for the rest of her life. Sometimes on quiet evenings, she would take it out and read a random passage, hearing his voice in her mind as clearly as if he were sitting beside her. The pages grew more worn with each passing year, the edges softened by her touch, the ink fading but never disappearing. It was her most treasured possession, more valuable than any award, any memory, any material thing. In 2014, at the age of 89, Lauren Bacall joined Humphrey Bogart in Whatever Comes Next. She passed peacefully, surrounded by family, in the apartment she had lived in for decades. The cause was a sudden illness, the end swift and merciful. Those who knew her said she had been ready, not eager, but accepting. She had lived a full life, loved deeply and left her mark on the world. At her memorial, her children spoke of her strength, her humor, her unwavering commitment to authenticity, but it was a letter she had left behind that captured her essence most completely. "When I met Humphrey," she had written, "I was a girl pretending to be a woman. He saw through the pretense immediately, but instead of calling me out, he helped me grow into the person I was meant to become. That is what real love does. It does not diminish you, it expands you. It makes you more yourself, not less. I spent my whole life trying to be worthy of the love he gave me. I do not know if I succeeded, but I know I tried, and I know that trying was the greatest adventure of my life." The journal remained in the family after her passing. Her children debated what to do with it. Some suggested donating it to a museum, others argued for keeping it private. In the end, they chose a middle path. The journal itself would remain with the family, but excerpts would be shared with scholars and biographers who could place it in proper historical context. But the full contents, the raw, unfiltered outpouring of Humphrey Bogart's heart, would remain protected. Some things are too sacred to be fully exposed. Some love stories are meant to be whispered, not shouted. What Lauren Bacall found in that journal was more than words on a page. It was proof that the man she loved had loved her back with equal intensity. It was confirmation that their connection had not been one-sided or idealized or diminished by time. It was, in the end, exactly what he had intended it to be, a love letter that would outlast them both. There is a photograph that hangs in the Bogart family collection. It shows Humphrey and Lauren on the deck of the Santana, his beloved sailboat, sometime in the early 1950s. They are not looking at the camera. They are looking at each other, caught in a moment of private joy that the photographer accidentally captured. In the picture, Bogart is smiling, not the ironic smirk of his screen persona, but a genuine, unguarded smile of pure happiness. Lauren is laughing, her head thrown back, her hand resting on his arm. The sun is setting behind them, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange. They look in that moment like exactly what they were, two people who had found each other against impossible odds and refused to let go. The photograph has no caption. It needs none. Some images speak for themselves, and some love stories need no explanation. They simply are. If you watched this far, it is because you felt something real. This was not just a story about two Hollywood legends. It was a story about love, the kind that transforms us, sustains us, and lives on long after we are gone. Lauren Bacall spent her final years knowing that she had been truly loved. Humphrey Bogart spent his final months making sure she would never doubt it, and between them, they created something that transcended fame, fortune, and even mortality itself. They created a love story worthy of the ages. So what did Lauren Bacall find in that journal? She found herself, reflected in his words, preserved in his observations, immortalized in his devotion. She found proof that even in a world that often feels cold and cynical, true love is possible. And she found peace. The knowledge that she had not imagined it, had not exaggerated it, had not let nostalgia distort the truth. Their love had been real. Their love had been extraordinary. Their love had been enough. The journal still exists, carefully preserved, a testament to a time when love letters were written by hand and feelings were captured in ink rather than pixels. Future generations will study it, analyze it, contextualize it within the broader history of Hollywood and American culture. But those who read it with open hearts will understand something the academics might miss. They will understand that at its core, this is not a Hollywood story at all. It is a human story. A story about two people who were brave enough to love each other completely, without reservation, without holding back. Her story about the marks we leave on each other's lives. A story about the words we write and the silences we share. A story about what it means to truly know another person and to be truly known in return. Lauren Bacall opened Humphrey Bogart's secret journal. What she found inside changed everything forever. Not because it revealed scandals or secrets, but because it revealed truth. The truth of a love that defied expectations. The truth of a man who was so much more than his public image. The truth of a woman who was loved beyond measure. And the truth that some things, some feelings, some connections, some moments are worth preserving forever. They don't make love stories like theirs anymore, but perhaps if we are lucky, we can learn from their example. Perhaps we can put down our phones and pick up our pens. Perhaps we can tell the people we love how we really feel. Perhaps we can leave behind something more lasting than memories. Perhaps we can write our own journals. And perhaps someday someone who loves us will open those pages and discover the depth of our devotion. That would be a legacy worth leaving. That would be a love worth remembering. That would be a story worth telling, just like theirs. If you made it to the end of this story, you are part of a special group, people who understand that real love is the greatest adventure of all. Leave a comment saying, "I watched this far, so I can get to know you and know who really appreciates the stories on this channel." Your support means everything. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have not subscribed yet, now is the time. Join this community of people who believe that love, loyalty and integrity still matter. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Because there are more stories to tell, more lives to explore, more love to celebrate, and I want you to be here for all of it. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, thank you for caring. Until next time, remember, they don't make love stories like theirs anymore. But maybe, just maybe, we can try to live ones that come close.